Hello and welcome to another episode of Deprogrammed. I'm your host, Keri Smith, and I'm very excited about my interview today. My guest is someone that many people in the crafting community, the sewing community, the knitting community, the crocheters, everyone kept saying, you have to learn, you have to know who this person is, and you should really talk to her. Um, Without further ado, please welcome the famous artist, Birdy Rose, who has the best bio, by the way. I asked you about your bio and you said, I'm an artist and I like to drink tea.
Yeah, it's true. 100% true.
You have, I've got your website pulled up here, which we're going to show people in a second. But can you just tell people a little bit about yourself if they're not familiar with you and where they can find you online?
All right, well, I'm an artist. I'm the famous artist Birdy Rose. I identify as famous and an artist. And I'm on the internet as the famous artist Birdy Rose, and I don't really know what else to say about myself other than I'm an artist and I do drink a lot of tea, mainly out of my own mugs that I sell online.
Are you British?
Yeah.
Something gave you away.
Was it the tea? It can't have been the tea. I was
Not
definitely
the
subtle
tea,
about it.
maybe the accent. I'm gonna just pull up your website here so we can start here. So for anyone who's not familiar with you, the famous artist Birdy Rose, you can go to the famous artist Birdy Rose,
Oh, look at that.
famousartistbirdy.rose.com. And you have it's just so colorful. You do a variety of prints, you have calendars, stickers, t-shirts, and you have like what jumps out at me immediately is some of the stuff that you have in your artwork looks like the kind of thing that could get you in trouble in 2023. You have men are not women.
Yep, that's true.
It says this is a fact.
Yep, it is. It's a fact.
You have humans cannot change sex.
Yep, that's also a fact.
Have you well, look, I like free speech.
Yep, I do.
My truth is truthier than your truth. I love that one.
It absolutely is.
You're so we sh I wanna go on the road with you, we do a comedy routine where you're like my British hype man who just goes, "Yep."
That's so good.
You've got a friend of our show here, a friend of Deprogrammed, Deb Philman from The Reason We Learn, and she's wearing a beautiful shirt you did. It looks like a tattoo with some, flowers and a sword, and it says, "Death before compelled speech."
Yeah.
So, tell me first a little bit about before we get into, like, the content of your work, tell me about how you became an artist.
Oh, well, I'm going to be really cliche and say that I've always liked art, and I
Hmm.
actually always have. But when I was really little, I wanted to be an art teacher, and I think that's because I'm going to say this. I don't want to say this to put myself down, but I think that's because there was a tiny little bit of an authoritarian streak in me. Because when I used to pretend to be a teacher in my bedroom, before I could even write, I used to like scribble on paper and pretend that I was like calling out all the names of the kids in the class, and I put all my dolls in a line, and then I would put them all in detention.
Oh. You know what? Maybe all kids go through that authoritarian streak.
Mm-hmm.
I had something similar where a couple of my friends and I would play school, but I took it very seriously and they didn't, and I would grade them and be
Yep.
like, "No, you failed."
Yeah, that was me. I would be like, "You're in detention now, forever."
But you specifically want to be an art teacher.
I did, and I can't. Yeah, I wanted to be an art teacher when I was little, and I think that's because I liked being in school when I was really little. I'd been in school since I was really young. I started when I was 3 because I'm deaf. So I went to school early and I learned sign language, and I picked up reading and writing pretty quickly because of it, because we had these like picture cards with the words on it, and you'd learn the sign language, and then I was learning lip reading at the same time. So I managed to connect it all up. So I was given a little bit of a head start in school, really, and I
Mm.
quite liked school when I was little because, well, it was just a nice thing, and maybe that's why I wanted to be a teacher. Then I get to be in school forever. I'm glad I didn't go
Yeah.
down that route.
So you just mentioned that you're deaf, and so you started school early. And
Hmm.
for anyone who's curious, the ignorant like me, so what's happened? How is it that you can hear now?
Well, so what happened was when I was in the womb, sorry, I just knocked my mic over. When I was in the womb, my mum got rubella syndrome. I think they called it German measles back then, but
Oh,
you're not allowed to
okay.
call it that anymore. So,
Is it
rubella.
insensitive?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got rubella, and I was actually, this is a whole topic in itself, but my mum was strongly recommended to terminate me because
Wow.
I was predicted to be born deaf, blind, and mute, and paralyzed from the neck down, and I wouldn't live past the age of 5 or something like that. So there was a lot of pressure to just don't bother with this one. And I'm glad she didn't, because I'm
Wow,
here.
yes.
So,
Yes.
and so that's a whole topic. But because of that, I was born deaf, and I had heart issues and breathing issues and things wrong with my throat and things like that. That had a few issues that just weird. And I could hear more when I was a kid than I can now.
Mm,
I communicate very well because of the things that happened to me. So, like, for example, starting school when I was 3 and having that specialized attention, there was only about maybe 4 or 5 of us kids in the class, and we all learned to lip read and to sign. And I, like I said, I got the picture cards and the words, and I connected it all up. So we all had like a little bit of a head start. Some kids were more advanced than others because if you're extremely deaf and you can't hear anything, there's a lot of things that are in your way, like in barriers and in your communication and in your learning. So I was quite like, I got lucky basically with my rubella. I got lucky because I was only partially deaf in both ears, and then two things happened that helped my communication and hindered it as well. So one thing was that I had an operation on my throat when I was about 7 to help me talk
mhm.
and to help me swallow. There was something wrong with me, and to help me breathe as well. And because of that, I had one-on-one specialized speech therapy afterwards for a few years. So
Okay.
I learned to talk quite well. And then something that hindered me was when I was maybe about 10 or 11 years old, I was on a roller coaster and I hit my head, and blood came out of this ear, and I never heard from it ever again. So I lost my hearing in that ear.
Wow. Okay.
And so I'm now partially deaf in one ear and completely deaf in the other.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for telling us about that.
That's
I'm
a
just
lot.
curious. It is a lot. So you got this early education. You were in the classroom at an early age. You thought you wanted to be an art teacher. You were drawn to art. What kinds of art were you doing as a child?
I, I drew anything. Like, I drew pictures of myself quite a lot at one stage when I was like maybe 7 years old. I was drawing pictures of myself in all different scenarios, like me flying or me in a spaceship and things like that. So it was all about me. But then I started to, as you get, I suppose this is a developmental thing, but as I got older, I started to explore what's around me, if that makes sense.
I think that's what is supposed to happen. A lot of people seem stuck in that childhood
Yeah.
stage. Me. So then you started to explore what's around. Were you always
Yeah.
did you have a talent as a kid?
Yeah, I did, but I wasn't the most talented. Like, there were people always throughout my whole life, and I had to learn this lesson quite early, that there's always going to be somebody that can draw better than me. And I learned that I got put in my place pretty quickly with that, because there was always people in my school that drew way better than me. But something that I learned in adulthood is that I do think I'm very creative, whereas a lot of people can draw better than me, but they don't have a lot of ideas, or they don't have like lots of weird things going on in their head
Mhm.
like I do.
I think it's a combination, like any kind of art or talent, like even sports. It's it's that combination of varying degrees of talent and then the work ethic and the creativity and in your case where you're talking about like the creativity and and the what's the word I'm thinking of? The precision, like being able to execute certain things. And some people were like balanced differently in that
Yeah, it's not
in that way.
distributed evenly between all of us. We don't get an even amount of anything in life.
Well, that
Like,
sounds
naturally.
unfair. How do we fix that? I'm just kidding.
Well, what we do is we force everyone to be the same.
That's what's happening. That's what they're trying to do.
It's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it was good for me to learn those lessons. I didn't like it. I didn't like seeing other when I was like maybe 6 or 7. I remember had that feeling of not liking seeing somebody draw better than me. But I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what those feelings were. I couldn't articulate it. So I was just a bit like, hang on a minute. I'm the best one in the class. Why who's this guy? Where did he come from? He's like, why is he drawing dinosaurs way better than me? But what I learned as I got older is that, you know what? I just have to work harder at it if I want to be as good as that person. He might have just been naturally gifted, but I have to work harder.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is.
So when did you start making art as an adult, such a focus of your life? Like, when did you say, I'm dedicating myself to this, to my pursuit of this?
Oh, I was about, I think, 24. And there's a bit of a story behind that. I don't really tell a lot of people, but I used to be on antidepressants. So between the age of 17 and 23, 24. And it's citalopram. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they don't give it to anybody under the age of 25 anymore because apparently it does something to your brain. And I had insomnia, like crazy insomnia. I felt like I was going crazy. And a lot of things going on between those ages where, like, I think a lot of people go through it where they feel a little bit lost. They don't know their place in the world. They don't know who they are, So we're seeing a lot of those people being very loud on the internet these days. And I didn't have that outlet, so I just went in on myself a little bit. But when I came off the citalopram, it felt like, because I went cold turkey and I felt like I had a full-blown panic attack. I had like a little bit of like a meltdown or something. And I decided that I needed to focus. I needed to focus on something to help me feel better because I can't live on the edge mentally like that all the time. So I started painting, and the first time I started painting, I stayed up all night and painted. And I dabbled in painting before, but like I really focused. This was it now. All my friends were going to the pub, going to the club, drinking, and I was staying in and painting. And that's when I started to really feel like there was a shift between the relationship between me and my art. I'm now taking it more seriously because I need it. And I didn't realize how much maybe something like that could be helpful. That's a bit cheesy. I mean, a lot of people say they do art to help them.
It's not cheesy. It makes sense. It's cathartic. Even if you're not an artist like me. I enjoy, the common man, any kind of the knitters who suggested that, who made me aware of you, any type of art or creativity, or even the adult coloring books that you can buy if you don't have any talent but you just want to color. It's great. It's cathartic. It's good for you.
Do you know what it is as well? I think there's something to the repetitive thing. So I draw a lot of lines, and that was something I got really into for a long time because it helps me to sort of like stay grounded. So like the pen's on the paper, I'm going like that, I'm drawing all the line, I can feel it, I'm connected to it, and it does keep me grounded in a way.
Have you ever done it makes me think of the japa beads or the rosary? Have you ever prayed the rosary or had someone showed me how to do it? It's very repetitive.
Yeah, I have been shown how to do it.
Yeah, I think there's something about that in these different very different religions, but they have sometimes similar repetitive sort of meditative parts of a service or prayer or getting in touch with something bigger than yourself. And I think it's sort of similar, maybe, what you're describing.
It's very similar. I have a friend who's like an actual Buddhist. She's, for real, been a Buddhist for like 20 years. And she chants every day. And I've chanted with her before, just out of curiosity to like feel it out, see what's going on. And there is something to it.
Mm-hmm.
There is. It's like it is. I personally call it grounding. It does ground you, and it sort of like clears your head a little bit, makes you feel a bit better. It's people. I feel like people now. A lot of people are missing, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is implementing that throughout their day. That sort of whatever it is they can find that grounds them and makes them connected to the here and now. People need to find it more because it ain't online.
Yes. Yes. And you can do repetitive stuff online, but it's not the cathartic kind of repetition. It's like the scrolling, scrolling, clicking, clicking. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Do you, as an artist, do you get into this space? Sometimes when I'm writing, and my husband and I have talked about this, he's a musician. And so he
Yeah,
writes.
my one's a musician as well.
Okay. So maybe you guys have had this conversations as well. What he writes as a musician is it's different than what I'm writing. But there's this similar state sometimes that I think you can get in when you're creating, when anyone's creating, where sometimes it just something seems to flow from you, almost as if it's not of you. And other times it's definitely you and you're trying really hard and it sucks. Like, and
Yeah,
you're like trying to
we've had
force
that
it.
conversation.
Have you?
Like, yeah, and also we're very, because I think it helps that we're both artists because we're very, very sort of understanding of each other's creative space and creative ways. So there has been time that we've been talking, and all of a sudden he'll go, I have to go upstairs, and he'll just run upstairs and write a song quickly, and then he'll come back and go, I just needed to get that out. I
Yes.
just needed to get that.
Yeah.
I didn't want that to pass me by. Like, it's almost like he's just grabbing it as otherwise it's going to go to
Yes.
somebody else.
I know that exactly, although it's different. But like I'll
Yeah.
have a moment where an essay will write itself in my head and I'm like, if I don't write this down now, I'm not going to write it. And that's true. If I don't stop, there have been times where I haven't stopped and then later I try to come back to that idea. Oh, that idea that I had. No.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
it's
happened to
gone.
me. And do you know what? It's exactly like when you wake up from a dream and you remember something vividly, and 2 minutes later it's not there anymore. It's just like that. It's
Yes.
like tapping into a dream part of your brain.
Do you do that with art where you're like, excuse me for a second, I have to
Yeah.
go paint this?
I had to, the other night, I woke up at about maybe 2:30 in the morning, and I had to get up and draw something and then go back to bed. And I was a little bit pissed off that I had to do it. But
Yeah.
I was kind of like, if I don't do it, I'll be more pissed off with myself tomorrow because I don't think I'll remember it the next time I wake up. So it's things like that do happen, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about so around the age of 24, you said is when you really started focusing on your art. Um, w- what kind of things? What your art definitely has a point of view. Some of your pieces, like the ones we were reading, um, pretty on the nose. Um, what? How did you decide to start expressing yourself in that way through your art? Like
Okay,
saying
well,
what you think about the culture or things that are going on in the world.
I had dabbled in it. I dipped my toes in it a little bit before, but I wasn't a massive, like, it wasn't pulling me that way. And I had people say to me in the past, like, definitely when I was on the left and I was in the art and music scene, people were like, you need to use your art for politics. And I was like, no, I don't. My art is an escape. I don't want all that in my head all the time. And now I've gone the other way, sort of thing. Like, I am commenting on what's going around it. And I think one of the things that made me do it is I really started in 2020, when all the lockdowns and everything were happening, everyone was going crazy. And I felt like I couldn't engage with people being crazy in their statuses. I didn't want to write any more statuses about, the fact that men are not women and things like that. And so I just felt like I had exhausted myself in writing, and I need to express myself in a way that I feel might be more effective. But I did it for me. I didn't really do it for other people necessarily. I didn't think, okay, if I do this, lots of other people will like it. I did it because I felt like I needed to express myself in a different way. And then I look back on it now, and I think I did it because I needed to be grounded during this time when all the lockdowns were happening and George Floyd and all this stuff and everybody was being mental. I'd say that nicely. but everyone was being mental. And I felt like I didn't want to be in the whirlwind of, there was a lot of fear around, there was a lot of feelings happening. And then, I got cancelled about a week after I started this, like the second time I got cancelled. So it only pushed me into the art more. If people had left me alone, I don't know if I would have done all that as much as I have. But it pushed me into it more.
I love that, because see, the cancellation, when that happens, I've seen with different people, some people will go into hiding for a while, and that's what they need to do, and
Yep.
to get grounded and collect themselves before they come back. But other people, they didn't know what they were messing with you,
Yeah,
because
yeah. Well,
it's like,
we've had both, because my
yeah,
partner, he went in on himself. He's gone quiet. He hasn't done everything that he used to do, and he needs that time. He needs to
mhm,
come back strong when he's ready.
when he's ready.
I, on the other hand, was ready for a fight. Does that make sense? And I didn't
It
know
makes
I was ready
total
for a
sense.
fight, by the way. I had
You
no
didn't know?
idea. I was like, holy shit. I didn't know I had this in me. But
Yes,
you don't know what you're made of. You don't.
until that happens.
Hmm.
Um, I wanna, just because you said people were in their feelings, I just wanna show this T-shirt of yours that really beautiful,
I love it.
RIP your feelings.
Yeah.
I love it as well. So, let's talk about your cancellation. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
Can you tell the story of what happened to you?
Have you got like 2 years?
I know they usually
No,
go
I'm
this
only
way.
joking. No, I can give you a condensed, quick
Yeah.
version. The first time I got cancelled, it was somebody that we were friends with who identifies as trans. We'd stopped talking to this person about nearly a year prior. All of a sudden, that person tells everyone that I beat them up at a festival. And that was like, it was like saying that I've got leprosy or something. People didn't want anything to do with us anymore because this person said I beat them up. I didn't understand it at first, but what I've learned since is that that person was talking all sorts of shit behind my back anyway for about a year or more. And then the second time I got cancelled was in 2020 when I started doing this art. I did a portrait of J.K. Rowling and Magdalene Burns. I think I'd only done those two at the time. And our ex-friends that were still friends with the person who said that about me, we weren't friends
Mm,
with them anymore either. We'd actually separated from a lot of people around about 2017 because of the toxic dynamic. You know how it gets in friendships?
yeah.
And you're like, do you know what? This isn't working for us. We need to step away from that crowd. So we stepped away from that crowd. And in 2020, they all came for us. And they started by coming for me and saying,
And these
Birdy
are people
Rose,
you knew personally.
people we knew personally. And the worst bit is we'd introduced them all to each other. So they wouldn't have known each other without
Ugh.
us. So that sucks. Like, and it really sucked. And so they went after me. They named me on the internet. They were saying things like I'm a snake in the grass. That acting like they've only just found out that I have these awful views that humans can't change sex and maybe we shouldn't sterilize kids. Like this awful thing that I'm doing. And
Right.
I don't think I've changed my views necessarily. I just didn't realize how mental this all was. Um, but yeah, I got cancelled proper for that one, and that went on for like a couple of years. It's kind of still going on. People making fake accounts to slander me and defame
Yes.
me and things like that. I don't know if
And they will do things that normal people, because I think a lot of the people who get swept into the social justice ideology, either they already have mental problems or the
yeah,
ideology itself is mental. The
but it
ideology
makes
itself,
people
it
mental.
makes people crazy. Yeah, and so
Hmm.
they will do things that normal people can't imagine. Like, for example, telling other people that you beat them up, which is such
Yeah,
an out there lie. And when a normal person hears that, I think they tend to think, well, there must be some kind of truth to this. Where did this
that's
come from? That's what they
that's
think.
exactly what happened. Because
Yeah,
people were saying to me, "Well, this person wouldn't say it if something didn't happen," and
right.
people were telling me that this person actually cried in their arms
Yeah.
about it, and I was like, you don't realize how psycho this is. This
Yeah.
is not normal. But it doesn't make me look good to when I say that I haven't done anything to these people, because I don't think people are naturally inclined to believe that.
Yeah.
But I actually haven't done anything to these people, and what happens because of that is when I say I haven't, it makes me look worse.
Yes, because what they've done is it's the are you familiar with this idea of the loaded question where it's like, when did you stop beating your wife?
I'm familiar, but I don't quite understand it.
So you can't answer that question because they've built into it the idea that you have been beating your wife, and
Right, okay, so
there
it's a lose-lose.
it's a lose-lose, and there are some people, in my experience in the past few years, who I think have personality disorders or things that often get called like cluster B personality disorders, who they don't behave like normal people. They will do things you can't imagine, like make things up out of whole cloth. And once you've stepped in to address their insanity, it's almost like just by denying what they're making up about you, you've now legitimized it as a
Yeah,
question. And it's
that's
not even
exactly what
a legitimate
happened.
question. Yeah.
And other people have said I've beat them up. Coincidentally, everyone that I've apparently beat up identifies as some sort of trans or queer or non-binary, and people are claiming that I've been stalking them. I've made them
Oh, yeah.
suicidal. They've claimed that I've made false allegations against them, or that I've threatened them. All sorts of
Girl,
things. But
I've
these
had a
people have
psycho say
called the
this kinda shit
police
about
on
me.
me.
Yes!
Yeah,
Okay, wait, go
it's
ahead.
crazy.
They called
I
the police
don't.
on you.
Yeah, they've called the police on me. I've had the police threaten to prosecute me. That was illegal as well. I've now got a case opened against my local police, and I don't report to them anymore because I don't trust them, because one of their officers illegally threatened to prosecute me on behalf of one of these guys that's going after me. And, it was sort of like he was doing it as a friend. The officer was doing it as a friend, threatening to prosecute me. So that was a whole mess. I haven't even put that online yet, but I intend to, because I
Yeah.
think there needs to be a discussion about, because the police came here, the chief inspector came here and spoke to me about how, they apologised and they want to make the relationship between the public and the police better. And it's like, how are you going to make that better when you got fucking police officers, sorry for swearing,
It's
but you
fine.
got these police officers going around threatening to prosecute people that haven't done anything.
Yes. They're using it's so crazy. So, the people who are making these false allegations, I would suspect it because it sounds like they are in this my old ideology, woke social justice. They would probably be the type of people who would join a defund the police rally, and
Yep,
yet
they have.
they have, and
And
yet
then
they're
they
the
called the police on
first
me.
the first to try and use the boot of the state, the
Hmm.
implied force, the gun of the state against a person.
Yep. And one of them was saying something along the lines of we need to just like abolish prisons, while also complaining about how I haven't been prosecuted yet.
They're so
But make your mind
disconnected.
up.
Yeah, make it right. They're so disconnected, it's like they can't even see the hypocrisy. Wow, honey, I am sorry you are dealing with I didn't realize it had gotten that far with, like,
It's
them
gone
trying to
really
involve
far. I don't think
lump
people
sum.
know how far it's gone with me, because I wrote about it a little bit on Twitter when I first got on Twitter, but then I became like self-conscious because there's so much that really turns me off about a really heavily victimized narrative, and I
Yes,
don't want to be a victim. So like
yes,
I'm trying my hardest to find a way to talk about what's happened without feeling overly sorry for myself. Because there are some days that I feel like maybe everything that's happened is the best thing that's ever happened to me, because it's shown me who I am. And I
yes.
feel so good moving forward in my life, knowing who I am, what I'm capable of, and what I can overcome. But at the same time, there are some days where I just feel like, do you know what? That is so shitty. I can't get my head around it. And I need to balance. I'm still balancing a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah. Uh, I've had my own experience with psychopaths and, figuring out how to deal with it, and there is that split where and I'm starting to live more in the place that you first described of, like, this is actually has been very good for me. And I think that's a good way to look at it, because there's a Bible verse that says, it's from Genesis. It says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good."
Oh, that just
And
gave me chills.
yeah,
That's so good.
because and I think it gets to that idea of people who are believers who say, God can use anything for good, anything. And sometimes when we're in the middle of something, like you're in the middle of this right now, and you have those days where it's like, I can't deal with this. I don't know how to bear it or how to respond, or should I respond? And when you're in the middle of it and you have those moments of doubt about, can I handle this? I think it's because we can't see through sometimes to the end. And it sounds like you're already in that place of seeing through to the end more and more, where it's like, no, this is going to be one of the best things when I look back at my life as a whole that happened to me, in terms of showing me who I am and making me stronger, putting me in the fire for a reason, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah,
Um,
because you can go both ways with that narrative. You can be resentful that you were put through it. So if you believe in God, you could be resentful towards God, right? You could be like, well, why would God put me through that? But that, like, I don't necessarily believe in God, but I do have those feelings of, why would this happen to me? Why do
mhm.
all these things happen to me? But I think it's actually like poison. It's like eating or drinking poison to keep feeding those thoughts over in a
Yes.
loop. And so I have to try and catch myself in it and cut that off. I have to go and do something, go for a walk, go to the gym, do some art, make it, even if it's just make a cup of tea or
Yeah.
cook some dinner, have to do something to ground myself again so that I'm not looping in my head and making
With the
myself
negative
crazy.
thought. Yeah, honey, you're on it. You were on it. You may not be a believer, but we have come to some of the same conclusions. There's another verse. I'm sorry not to get too deep into it, but maybe you'll take
That's
something
okay.
from it. Then I can move on. There's this whole chapter in the Bible of Hebrews 12, which is about running a marathon, like building yourself for endurance. And it talks about how God disciplines the sons that he loves. Not disciplines like punishes, disciplines like discipline in sports, like discipline when training for a marathon. And when you're going through that discipline, whether it's as an artist, you're disciplining yourself to get better and better at art, or in life, like you're being disciplined to become a stronger, better, more resilient version of yourself. That a Christian way of looking at that is like, I can't be resentful at God. It's human nature to be tempted to have those moments of like, why? but in the big picture, it's like, and I say this to friends when they're going through trials, it's like, God must really love you to spend this much time on you. And there are people who don't have those experiences to discipline them. And wow, like in the big picture, how amazing that you get to be someone who's been through the fire and come out the other side and become more resilient than the kind of person that's just sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Yeah.
Living
Which
like
is
coasting.
easy
Yeah,
to
which is
get
very
to.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I could have gone that way, but I don't think, well, I say I could have, but I don't think I had it in me because I think I knew inside, I knew I had to do something. I'm not a sort of sit and do nothing about it person.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I want to highlight some of, you mentioned you did a piece of on J.K. Rowling. You've some of your art you've started to highlight and do well, these are in your print section, but like pieces um, on some of the free speech warriors, people who are in this culture war in one way or another. You've got one here of Zuby.
Yeah,
If
I did those a long time ago. I did those all in 2020, pretty much all of them. I had like 3 months, I think, where I drew a portrait every day.
I love these portraits. I don't know why my brain's not working, because that's the word I was looking for, portrait. You've got one of Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying. I
They were
love it.
lovely about it because I emailed them and they had like somebody doing their emails for them. But they were so lovely about it. And the person who got back to me said, "Oh, Brett and Heather loved it," and they said thank you, and then I sent them a print as well. Yeah, I love those two.
It's
But
so
then,
great.
do you know what? In 2020, I'm sorry for interrupting, but in 2020, listening to people like that, these are all the people I was listening to as well. So going on a little bit of a journey through podcasts and things, and listening to people like that really, really helped me through.
Yep. Same. You know what? I didn't realize while I was talking about these, I thought I had them on the screen, but I didn't. So I was
That's
talking
all
about them
right.
and no one could see them here. This is the Zuby one I mentioned. Can
It's
everybody
so
see? Can you
good.
see it
I
now?
like
Okay.
Zuby.
I love him. He's very genuine, I think, and he's done so much. And everyone has like a different role to play, I think, in the place that we find ourselves at in the world right now. Here's the one of Brett and Heather. I thought I had on the screen. I love that. And I wanted to show this one also. Actually, there's a couple here. There's so many that I like. Coach Linda Blade.
Yeah.
Look at that. And you have this style that's like very kind of tattoo art, but also sort of reminds me of in Texas, there's this big revival of chain stitch embroidery, like from the 70s where, you know, the nudie suits. Do you know who the guy that did the nudie suits? He did like, if you look at any music artists from the 70s that had these beautifully intricate embroidered jumpsuits with flowers and roses like this, almost like
Oh, yeah, I've seen them before.
he did those. He did Elvis's gold lame suit and the white jumpsuit, but he did some for Dolly Parton that had like big wagon wheels embroidered on them. But your art kind of reminds me of that.
That's
Um,
cool.
it's very cool. Okay, Buck Angel.
Yep.
I'll just highlight. Okay, and one more because I could do this all day looking through these. You've got Jordan Peterson here, who, as you
Yeah,
mentioned,
that's one of my favorites. It made me laugh so much because I made him look really angelic, like there's a little
yeah,
religious element to it, and
yes,
that really tickled me when I drew it.
yeah, and he's got a little lobster lapel pin.
Yeah, so good.
That's awesome. Okay, I'll take this off the screen now. Um, so so what was that process like of you said some of these people helped you when you first started questioning things, and I that makes sense to me as well because I don't know how much you know about my past, but I was in that social justice world like these people who are mobbing you for about 2 decades, and I started leaving in around 2016. Jordan Peterson was very instrumental in that uh, for me, and I'm curious. I talked to a lot of people about their sort of waking up stories. So, when did you first become aware of what like social justice was about, or how did it first come into your life? Like a zombie movie. When were you first aware there were zombies, that something was
I
different?
don't think listen, listen. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to go listen. I meant that casually and nicely. But I don't think it's. I don't know if it's like this for everybody, but it doesn't feel like there's one moment. It feels like there's a series of
Yes.
moments, and then it all comes together, and you go, "Oh no, what have I been in? Why didn't I see this before?" But
Yes.
there's been a series. I think in around about 2016, 2017, I started to say to Doozer, my partner, his music name's Doozer McDoos. I started to say to him that I don't really feel like I fit in with the left anymore. And I've heard this phrase, social justice warrior, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if this is my kind of thing. And he said to me, "Oh, you can't say that on Facebook. We'll get in trouble if you say that you're not like on the left anymore or something like that." And I was like, okay, then I won't. I won't say online that I don't feel like I relate to the left anymore. But I don't think I realised what I was saying because over the years I've had time to look back and sort of like process and articulate my thoughts. And I think I was recognising that things around me were changing,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that I was recognising it. And then obviously there was little things like when I first wrote online about my PCOS diagnosis. So I got polycystic ovaries, and a man went nuts at me because I didn't mention trans women, and I was just like, "But it's you have to be female. It's a woman's disease, and that was a
Ovaries.
whole thing. Yeah, that was a whole thing. And he got really upset, and then I was like, oh, okay, something's going on here. And then it just got more and more little incidences, but definitely being cancelled. I mean, when I got cancelled the first time, I didn't know what cancel culture was, but I knew in my gut what it was. Does that make sense? It feels like it was something primitive, like
Yes.
this has happened to us so many times before throughout history that we sort of like, this is not true, by the way, I've made this up, but it's like we have like a little gene or something inside of her that turns on when it starts happening to her. And we know, like, it's like we know that people are out for our blood.
Girl, it
We
doesn't sound
sense it.
crazy. Have you heard Jordan Peterson talk about the way that baby monkeys who've never seen a snake, their DNA, there's something encoded, like they know the first time they see a snake, they know what they know to be afraid of it. Like,
I didn't know that. Yeah, that kind of like what I had. I had the feeling I knew it was bad. I knew it was really bad. And a few people that were friends with us at the time were saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to believe that. It's a stupid lie." But I knew where this was heading, and I didn't even know anything about cancel culture. So 2019, 2020, I got really locked in, and I felt like I was like accidentally doing my homework, if that makes sense. And I was finding
yes,
all these people that were talking about it, and I was like, oh my god, this is not just happening to me. This is not just I've got I've I've been around crazy people and I've pissed off this bunch of people by not being friends with them anymore. This is a whole thing, and it's cultural, and it's happening, and it's everywhere, and I
it's
didn't
everywhere.
realize. But when I started to wake up to that, I was like, shit.
You again, there's so much of this. I'm getting chills because it echoes like the path that I was on and learning some of this as well. It's like I knew deep down something was wrong when I started to see certain things happening in my social justice world. And those things were it was 2016 when I first started questioning some things. And there were more and more of those. And then once you start looking into history, and once you really just sort of leave the shackles of this ideological prison, in my case, that I had put myself in, and allow myself to be curious again, and to read things that were considered, and to watch things and listen to people that I was told, that my echo chamber told me I couldn't listen to or consider.
Yes.
Then you start finding all
Yeah.
this stuff throughout history, and you're like, this is human nature. This happens over and over and over.
Yeah,
Have
we
you
can't help ourselves.
Yeah, have you read, one of those things which gave me chills when I first read it or found it was, have you read The Tarantulas by Nietzsche?
No. I'm gonna
So,
write that down though. I'm gonna
write
get
this
that written
down.
down because I
He
have a book list going on for this year for everything. But I don't read them. I listen to them while I'm in the gym.
so just can I read you just a quick part of this?
Yeah.
And for anyone who's listening, ugh, okay. He says, he's like, "Lo, this is the tarantula's den. Wouldst thou see the tarantula itself? Here hangeth its web. Touch this, so it may tremble. There cometh the tarantula willingly. Welcome, tarantula. Black on thy back is thy triangle and symbol, and I know also what is in thy soul. Revenge is in thy soul. Wherever thou bitest, there ariseth black scab. With revenge, thy poison maketh the soul giddy. Thus do I speak unto you in parable, ye who make the soul giddy, ye preachers of equality. Tarantulas are ye unto me, and secretly revengeful ones. But I will soon bring your hiding places to the light. Therefore do I laugh in your face, my laughter of the height. Therefore do I tear at your web, that your rage may lure you out of your den of lies, and that your revenge may leap forth from behind your word of justice, in quotes. Because
Wow, that's
it's
so
more and
prophetic.
more and more
The
like you,
revenge part is
yeah.
so true as well. Because when people say to me, "Oh, why do you think your ex-friends did this?" I always say revenge.
Mhm.
Revenge. I don't know what revenge for. I mean, I can say it's revenge for not being friends with them anymore, but it could be revenge for anything, and they're just going
Yes.
for me. Do you
That's
know?
what it is. It's like that resentment, that revenge deep in the heart. And I think that that resentment is what that that my old ideology is built around. It it stews it up in people, and if you already have it, it teaches you to stay in it so that you're living
Yeah.
your life in that resentful way. Revenge for everything.
Yeah,
That's why they're
definitely. And
targeting.
you can be taught that you need to take revenge. You can be taught to feel a grievance about things. Like I dipped my toes in the feminist arena, and
Mhm.
it very much strikes me my experience of being in the feminism stuff. Like I didn't call myself a feminist, but I was there, and especially when I was getting cancelled, because there's a lot of feminists online that know how to talk about the gender identity stuff, and they're very helpful. But there is ideology even in there as well, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of resentment that comes up
Yeah.
towards men, and it becomes a men versus women thing rather than a women focusing on women thing.
Yes.
It becomes a war. So you can very easily, especially with the internet and people posting things from all around the world that are awful, and it's endless. You can become resentful and say, well, all these awful things that happen because we're women, and it's just because of men. There's,
Yes.
do you know what I mean?
I think some people have, so I think of social justice as a huge umbrella or a tent. And underneath it, there's different doors, like a circus tent, there's different doors to get
Yeah.
inside. And so I went in through that feminism door, but some people go in through the racism door or the fat phobia door, or the gender identity door, the sexuality door, what have you. But then when you leave that tent, I think you really have to leave the whole tent. And some
Yes.
people, they don't, or they haven't yet. They're still in there for like their particular oppressed identity. And it's like they reject the ideology when it comes to the other categories of identity, but they're still clinging to parts of the ideology
Oh yeah.
for
So
one
like
identity.
I see like, and this isn't just exclusive to feminists, but I've noticed that there are feminists who object to cancel culture when it comes to women being cancelled for talking about what a woman is, but they're okay with cancel culture if, for example, um, women or feminists in the UK apparently associate with the right or anybody who's not on the left. So they're okay with cancel culture for the politics,
Yes.
but not for the what being a woman is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like but this is a bit hypocritical because if you're going to advocate for the free speech to say that men are not women, you should advocate for free speech in other areas. For example, the freedom to associate with people who are not on the left.
Yes. Yeah. I think I try to have, and I think I do have patience for the feminists who are still in it in some ways, because I think maybe well, I know it's a slow process leaving that
Yep.
ideology, but I'm also not afraid to say like, no, I think there's a part of you that's still in there. And if you're okay with just sort of making like, well, like you said, participating in cancel culture if it's against men or people who are on the right or what have you, it's like you're still kind of you've got a foot in there when it comes to your unique oppressed identity, right? Then it's like, well, I'm still going to accept some of these tenets of belief when it comes
Yeah.
to women. And I'm like, the whole thing, the whole bag, it's like the whole bag is wrong. Um, well, Birdy, can you tell us where you're at now? So you've gone through how many cancellations have you gone through?
Well, two major ones. I've been like mini cancelled a little bit. I mean, I got in trouble when I drew the Buck Angel picture because some of the feminists, I think feminists and gender criticals, I don't want to label one because I don't know which groups some of
Mhm.
these people come from, but they didn't like that. They saw it as like me throwing women under the bus, being hypocritical and things like that. So that was another step away from, do you know what? This is why I don't call myself a feminist because I don't want to follow your rules. I just want to do my exploration and be free. I didn't get cancelled to be, as you said, shackled by somebody else. That's
Mhm.
not what I'm doing. But then there's been other things as well, you know, like me liking Jordan Peterson or me listening to Joe Rogan. And every now and again, somebody comes up and they're shocked about these things. And I'm like, I haven't hidden these things. You know, and also there might be things I like that you will never know about. How do you feel about that? Like, you just
You should
can't
do
have that level of control over people.
you should do a piece that's like, all the things I like that you don't know about, and it's just a cloudy, murky bag of like, oh, I can't tell what's in there.
I should. That'd be brilliant.
So silly. So you've gone through several of these, and you know what? Actually, before we talk about like what you're working on right now and stuff, can you talk about some of the positives of going through that and where you're at now? Because I know there are a lot of people who listen to Deprogrammed who, because I hear from people who, I mean, there are even now people still waking up,
Oh,
which if
yeah.
you've been awake for a while, you're like, some people are like, really? Like, it's kind of late, guy. I'm like, I don't care what time you get to the party, just come to the party. So people are still waking up, and some of them are going through those initial like fear stages, or some have been trapped in it for the whole past couple of years. And I always like for them to hear, like your fears are real. Yes. You know, you were talking about the trials you've been going through. The fears are real. Some people are afraid of losing their job or their social circle, their good name,
Or their
um,
family.
or their family, or being ostracized, or their sense of security, and those are all very real fears. But there are positives on the other side of walking through those fears and being true to yourself regardless. And so what are some of those positives for you if you had to name some of them?
Okay, well, the first one is the freedom to be honest with myself. Because when you're self censoring and you're scared, you're not even going to be honest with yourself in your own mind. And I think that's detrimental to your well being. Everybody wants to talk about mental health these days, but they're not talking about it honestly. And you need to be honest with yourself. And when you're honest with yourself, you can be more honest when you say things. I can say what pretty much whatever I want now. I don't care if
Yes.
I get kicked off a platform. I'm just like, hey, look how authoritarian and scary they are and how free I am. Look at me, I'm free. I can do what I want. And obviously within the law, I don't recommend breaking the law. That's not freedom. But that sense of freedom has been really helpful to me because it does make me feel better. I am in a better place. I'm not resentful really about anything. And I used to be, and I used to be worried and stressed out and upset. I used to be like, oh, men hate us. Why do they hate us so much? I don't understand. While my partner, who's a man, was making me dinner and bringing me tea and rubbing my feet. And I'm like, why do men hate us so much? And he's like rubbing my feet to making me feel better.
I'm
So
so oppressed. Rub the other one.
yeah. So I can look at it now and laugh at it as well. And I think look, if you're scared of being cancelled or you're scared of being ostracized, you do need to have a plan. And you need to be honest with yourself about that plan. You need like an exit strategy, what you're going to do. And you don't even have to go like you can if you want go as detailed as who are the main people around you that you think are like, going to react negatively, and what are you going to do about that? And if you do lose people, be prepared for that, even though you can't really be prepared for it because it is painful. But if you know it's coming, you need a strategy of what you're going to do for your self care to get yourself through that. I wish I'd thought of that when it happened to me. I didn't know it was coming. And if I did know it was coming, I would have done that. I would have written out a plan of how I'm going to deal with this. Do I need somebody that I can speak to? Because I did. I had a therapist for a little while. And also doing things like going to the gym has been amazing. That's been like an actual lifesaver because being healthy in your mind means being healthy in your body as well. They're connected. You can't disconnect these things. They're together. So if you're going through a tough time, you get cancelled and everything's shit, eat well, sleep well, drink loads of water, take loads of walks because you're going to need to be in the best condition of your life to fight this, even though it is a psychological war. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
it does. And that is excellent advice. Excellent advice. I would say if you're making
And
that
you weren't
plan,
asking for advice, you were asking for all the good things as
well,
well.
no, I agree. One of my, I think the best interview that I ever did that someone had me come and talk about my experience was the one on trigonometry, and I will always remember one part of it. It's funny because you said exactly what I said. It
Oh,
was
really?
freedom. It was freedom, beautiful freedom on the other side. And if I could tell the former me about that and just, you know, put her concerns to rest. It's like there's no price on that. Like you
Yeah.
said, I can say whatever I want to. And I'm not, and I loved your point about if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest about anything. And that's so true. And I would think also as an artist, if you can't be honest with yourself, it probably affects your art. Whatever,
Yeah.
whoever's listening to this, whatever kind of art or work or passion you have, like it's probably keeping your creativity bottled up because you got to run even your creativity through that internal censor.
Yeah, and then it becomes fake. It's not real
Yes.
art. It's fake. It's fake if you're not drawing from the heart, essentially. And you know, drawing some of the stuff I've drawn that's controversial has given me the freedom to really explore and expand myself as an artist and where I want to go and what I want to do. 'Cause I still do painting, and they're nothing like what I put online. They're just another world. But because I've been honest with myself in that part of my creativity, when I paint on canvas, it just feels so refreshing because I'm not hiding anything. I'm not keeping anything in. It's just, it's out. It's there. People can feel however they want to feel about it. It's done. The worst bit, the being cancelled, that's happened. What random people say to me online, I don't care. And that's another thing. A lot of people are very tied to what people say to them online, and it hurts them and it gets in. And when you come out the other side of being cancelled and you've got all this freedom, you're able to protect yourself because you're honest with yourself as well. That gives you protection.
Yes. Yes. I I love this. I've so enjoyed this interview. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Love
coming
talking to you.
and coming on Deprogrammed. I hope you'll come back on the
Yeah, I'm
channel.
gonna I'm gonna go and listen to your episode on trigonometry because I didn't know you were on there, and I love those guys.
Oh, I love those guys too. Yes, and they're Brits.
Yeah.
They have a great accent like you. So tell people, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about right now?
Oh, it's not really. I have got plans with my art, but my main focus right now has been my health because it is January. I'll get a little bit wobbly in the darker months. I don't know if it's the same where you are, but it gets
Yes.
dark early, it's cold, everyone's miserable, and I struggle with it a little bit. So my main thing at the moment that I get a bit one track minded, and at the moment I'm just going to the gym every day, make sure I eat the right things, don't eat any junk, you know, really look after myself. And then as the spring rolls around, I know that I'm going to get fired up about my art because that's
Yeah.
just how it happens. So at the moment it's kind of like hibernating, and then I'll come back out.
I love that. What a great answer. What a great answer. You are yeah, you're just very inspiring. Okay, so
Thank you.
everybody, please go check out the famous artist BirdyRose.com. We have all the links below where you can find her on other platforms. I hope that you'll give her a follow. And thank you so much, Birdy, for being here with
Thank
us
you for
today.
having me. It's been so nice to chat to you.
Thank you to today's sponsor, the Church on the Square of Georgetown, Texas, which happens to be my church. My church is no longer allowed to advertise on Facebook, which is unfortunate because that's how I and a lot of other church members originally found them. They've been told that they violate community standards. There's no details there of what that means, but you guys know the score. Anyway, since they're not allowed to advertise, I'm here to give them a plug. You can find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. You can also find videos of all the sermons and some other kinds of content on their YouTube page at Church on the Square. You can also join us. If you happen to be in the Georgetown, Texas area, we meet every Sunday at Ken's Guitars, that's Kenz, Ken's Guitars, right on the Georgetown Square. We meet outside, right on the square. Sometimes, if the weather's nice, you might find us there. You might find us outside in front of Ken's. But if you're local, I hope to see you. Thank you.